these books, Howard Zinn honored the voices of those ignored, exploited, and forgotten by history. He showed us our country through the eyes of women, African Americans, Native Americans, immigrants, and laborers. And tonight, we hope to bring these voices to life. If you feel moved, excited, or angered by any of these monologues, as we hope you do, we urge you to show it. We are here to demonstrate that the voices of the oppressed matter. We are here to make sure that Howard Zinn's legacy is upheld, especially at Boston University, where his impact is still tangible today. We are here to remind you of how accurate Zinn was when he said, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we only see the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of the world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now, as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. We dedicate this performance to Howard Zinn.
Sojourner Truth, who herself was freed from slavery in 1827, addresses a gathering of feminists in Akron, Ohio in 1851, denouncing the religious arguments commonly made to justify the oppression of women.
Well, children, where there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women of the North all talking about rights, the white men are going to fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? Well, that man over there says that women need to be helped into cabbages and lifted over ditches and given the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into cabbages over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And besides, ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my farm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man can head me. Ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I can get it, and bear the lash as well. Ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen almost all sold to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. Ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's it they call it? Intellect. That's it, honey. What's that got to do with women's rights and Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold well kinds, and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? Then that little man in black there, he says, women can't have the same rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Men had The men had left.
In November 1872, Susan B. Anthony was one of 14 women who defied the law to cast a ballot in the presidential election. She was arrested for knowingly voting without having the right to vote, and on June 1873 was arrested, was found guilty. The next day, when her lawyer appealed the verdict, she addressed the court in response to a question from the judge, Ford Hunt.
Will the prisoner please rise? Has the prisoner anything to say of why sentence shall not be pronounced?
Yes, Your Honor. I have many things to say. For in your ordered verdict of guilty, you trampled underfoot every vital principle of our government. My natural rights, my civil rights, my political rights, my judicial rights are all alike ignored. Robbed of the fundamental privilege of citizenship, I am degraded from the status of a citizen to that of a subject. And not only myself individually, but all of my sex are, by your Honor's verdict, doomed to political subjugation under this so-called Republican form of government.
The court cannot listen to a rehearsal of an argument the prisoner's counsel has already consumed 3 hours in presenting.
May it please your Honor, I'm not arguing the question, but simply stating the reasons why the sentence cannot, in justice, be pronounced against me. Your denial of my citizens' right to vote is the denial of my right of consent as one of the governed, the denial of my right of representation as one of the taxed, the denial of my right to a trial by a jury of my peers as an offender against the law, and therefore the denial of my sacred right to life, liberty, property,
The court cannot allow the prisoner to go on.
but your Honor will not deny me this one and only poor privilege of protest against this high-handed outrage upon my citizens' rights.
The court must insist the prisoner has been tried according to the established forms of law.
Yes, Your Honor, but by forms of law all made by men, interpreted by men, administered by men, in favor of men and against women. When just yesterday, these same man-made forms of law declared it a crime punishable with $1,000 fine and 6 months imprisonment to give a cold cup of water, a crust of bread or a night's shelter to a panting fugitive tracking his way to Canada. And every man or woman in whose veins coursed a drop of human sympathy violated that wicked law, reckless of consequences, and was justified in doing so. Just as the slaves who got their freedom had to take it over or under or through the unjust forms of law, precisely so must women now get their right to a voice in this government. And I have taken mine, and mean to take it at every opportunity.
The court must insist. The court sentences that you shall pay a fine of $100 and the cost of the prosecution.
May it please your Honor, I will never pay $1 of your unjust penalty. All the stock and trade I possess is a debt of $10,000 incurred by publishing my paper, The Revolution, the sole object of which was to educate all women to do precisely as I have done. Rebel against your man-made, unjust, unconstitutional forms of law, which tax, fine, imprison, and hang women, while denying them representation in the government. Now I will work with might and main to pay every dollar of that honest debt. But not a penny shall go to this unjust plan. I shall work earnestly and persistently to continue to urge all women to the practical recognition of the old revolutionary maxim: resistance to tyranny is obedience to God.
is patriotism? Is it love of one's birthplace? The place of childhood's recollections and hopes, dreams and aspirations? In short, is it love for the spot, every inch representing a dear and precious recollection of happy, joyous, and playful childhood? If that were patriotism, few American men of today could be called upon to be patriotic. Since the place of play has been turned into factory, mill, and mine, while deepening sounds of machinery have replaced the music of the birds. What then is patriotism? Indeed, conceit, arrogance, and egotism are the essentials of patriotism. Let me illustrate. Patriotism assumes that our globe is divided into little spots, each one surrounded by an iron gate. Those who have had the fortune of being born on some particular spot consider themselves nobler, better, grander, more intelligent than the living beings inhabiting any other spot. It is therefore the duty of everyone living on that chosen spot to fight, kill, and die in the attempt to impose his superiority upon all the others. The inhabitants of the other spots reason in like manner, of course, with the result that from early infancy, the mind of the child is provided with blood-curdling stories about the Germans, the French, the Italians, the Russians. When the child has reached manhood, he is thoroughly saturated with the belief that he has been chosen by the Lord himself to defend his country against the attack or invasion of any foreigner. But an army and navy represent the people's toys. To make them more attractive and acceptable, hundreds and thousands of dollars are being spent for the display of toys. That was the purpose of the American government in equipping a fleet and sending it along the Pacific coast, that every American citizen should be made to feel the pride and glory of the United States. Yes, $260,000 were spent on fireworks, theater parties, and revelries, at a time when men, women, and children through the breadth and length of the country were starving in the streets, when thousands of unemployed were willing to sell their labor at any price. Shelter and education, the children of those cities were taken to see the fleet, that it may remain, as one newspaper said, a lasting memory for the child. A wonderful thing to remember, is it not? The implements of civilized slaughter. If the mind of the child is poisoned with such memories, what hope is there for a true realization of human brotherhood? We Americans claim to be a peace-loving people. We hate bloodshed. We oppose violence. Yet we go into spasms of joy over the possibility of projecting dynamite bombs from flying machines upon helpless citizens. We are ready to hang, electrocute, or lynch anyone who, from economic necessity, will risk his own life in the attempt upon that of some industrial magnate. Yet our hearts swell with pride at the thought that America is becoming the most powerful nation on earth, and that she will eventually plant her foot on the necks of all others. Such is the logic of patriotism. Thinking men and women the world over are beginning to realize that patriotism is too narrow and limited a concept to meet the necessities of our time. The centralization of power has brought into being an international feeling of solidarity among the oppressed nations of the world.
They would have you believe that the Socialist Party consists in the main of just loyalists and traitors. It is true, in a sense, not at all to their discredit. We frankly admit that we are just loyalists and traitors to the real traitors of this nation. Those who on the Pacific Coast are trying to hang Tom Mooney and Warren Billings in spite of their well-known innocence. The protest of practically the whole civilized world. Every solitary one of these aristocratic conspirators and would-be murderers claims to be an arch-patriot. Every one of them insists that the war is being waged to make the world safe for democracy. What rot, what humbug, what false pretense.
Right.
These autocrats, these tyrants, these red-handed robbers and murderers, the patriots, well, the men who have the courage to stand face-to-face with them, speak the truth, and fight for their exploited victims, they are the disloyalists and traitors. If this be true, I want to take my place side by side with the traitors in this fight. How stupid and short-sighted the ruling class really is. Cupidity is stone blind. It has no vision. The greedy, profit-seeking exploiter cannot see beyond the end of his nose. He can see a chance for an opening. He is cunning enough to know what graft is and where it is, and where to secure it, but vision he has none, not the slightest. He knows nothing of the great throbbing world that spreads out in all directions. He has no capacity for literature, no appreciation for art, no soul for beauty. And that is the penalty that the parasites pay for the violation of the laws of life. The Rockefellers are blind. They have no vision. Every blow they strike at the socialist movement but reacts upon themselves. Every time they strike at us, they hit themselves. It never fails. Every time they strangle a socialist paper, they add 1,000 voices proclaiming the truth of the principles of socialism and the ideals of the socialist movement. They help us in spite of themselves. They have always taught and trained you to believe it to be your patriotic duty to go to war and have yourselves slaughtered at their command. But in all the history of the world, you, the people, have never had a voice in declaring war. And strange as it certainly appears, no war by any nation in any age has ever been declared by the people. And here, let me emphasize the fact, and it cannot be repeated too often, that the working class who fight the battles, the working class who make the supreme sacrifices, the working class who freely shed their blood and furnish the corpses, have never yet had a voice in declaring war or making peace. It is the ruling class that invariably does both. They alone declare war, and they alone make peace. Yours not to reason why, yours but to do and die. That is their motto, and we object on the part of the awakening workers of this nation. If war is right, let it be declared by the people. You who have your lives to lose, you certainly above all others have the right to decide the momentous issue of war or peace.
In the mid-1930s, a wave of sit-down strikes struck off across the United States. The most important of these took place in the auto plants in Flint, Michigan in 1937. The workers held out for weeks and eventually scored a major victory against General Motors. Decades after the strike, the socialist Junora Dollinger recounted the strike and the impact it had.
When you worked in the factory in those days, no one cared what your name was. They used to say, once you pass the gates of General Motors, forget about the United States Constitution. Workers had no rights when they entered those plants. If a foreman didn't like the way you parted your hair, or whatever he didn't like about you, he may have looked it in the wrong way or said something no nothing. The workers were kept intimidated because if they didn't comply with what the foreman told them to do, they would lose their jobs and their families would starve. When workers started talking about organizing, management hired lip readers to watch the men talk to each other, even when they were right close to each other, so they could tell if they were talking union. That was the condition inside the plants. Combined with the bad conditions on the outside, poor living conditions, lack of proper food, lack of proper medical attention, and everything else, the auto workers came to the conclusion that there was no way they could ever break any of this injustice without joining a union. But they didn't all decide at one time. A considerable amount of preparatory work was done before the strike. We held meetings in garages, basements, secret meetings, so that people wouldn't get caught, beaten up. The first sit-down was December 30th in the small Fisher Body Plant 2. The workers were at the point where they had had just about enough, and under militant leadership, they sat down. And when the UAW leaders in the big Fisher Body Plant 1 heard about the sit-down in Fisher 2, they sat down also. That took real guts. It took political leadership. The company decided they had to break the strike. It was very cold. They turned off the heat in the building, and the men inside were starting to get really angry. Then the company police and the city police started shooting. The police were using rifles, buckshot, fire bombs, tear gas canisters. It was a shock to a lot of people. I mean, we had thought that General Motors would try to freeze us out or do something in the factories, but never open fire on us right in the middle of the city. Workers overturned police cars to make barricades. They ran to pick up the fire bombs, started them, and hurled them back at the police. The men wanted me to get out of the way. You know, the old protect the women and children business. I told them, get away from me! I've got as many weapons as you have! I was the only woman who stayed. It's when lights went on in my head, I thought, I never used a loudspeaker to address a large crowd of people, but I have got to tell them that there are women down here. First thing I did was attack the police. I called to them, cowards! Cowards! Shooting into the bellies of unarmed men and firing into the mothers of children! Then everything became quiet. There was silence on both sides of the line. I thought, it's the women, it is the women that can break this up, so I appealed to the women in the crowd. I called to them, break through those police lines and come down here and stand by your husbands, your brothers, your uncles, and your sweethearts. I could just see barely one woman just struggling to come forward, but a cop had grabbed her by the back of her coat. She just pulled out of that coat and started marching down to the battle zone. And after that, there were other men and other women who followed. That was the end of the battle. When those spectators came down into the center of the battle zone and the police retreated, there was a big roar of victory. Following the strike, the auto worker became a different human being. The women that had participated became a different type of woman, different from any we've ever known in the labor movement, and certainly not in the city of Flint. They carried themselves with a different walk. Their heads were held high. They had confidence in themselves. They were not only mentally different, but physically different as well. If you saw one of those women in the beginning, and then saw her just a short period after going through this experience, learning and feeling that she had things she could fit together in her life, it would be an entirely different woman.
One of the great liberal poets of our This poem, entitled America, is a humorous critique of the nation's establishment. It addresses his homosexuality, his refusal to go along with orthodoxy on any level, and presaged many of the countercultural, gay rights, and other liberation movements that erupted in the 1960s and 1970s.
America, I've given you everything. Now, I'm nothing. America, $2.57, January 17th, 1956. I can't stand my own mind. America, when will we end the human war? Don't fuck yourself with the atom bomb. I don't feel good. Don't bother me. I will run my home till I'm in my own right mind. America, when will you be angelic? When will you take off your clothes? When will you look at yourself through the grave? When will you be worthy of your million Trotskyites? America, why are your libraries so full of tears? America, when will you send your eggs to India? I'm sick of your insane demands. When can I go to the supermarket and buy what I need with just my good looks? America, after all, it is you and I who are perfect, not the next world. Your machinery is too much for me. You made me want to be a saint. There must be some better way to settle this argument. Burroughs is in Tangiers. I don't think he's coming back. It's sinister. Are you being sinister, or is this all some form of practical joke? I'm trying to come to the point. I refuse to give up my obsession. America, stop pushing. I know what I'm doing. America. The blood losses are full. I'll admit, I haven't read the newspapers in a couple of months. Every day somebody goes on trial for murder. America, I feel sentimental about the monologues. America, when I was a child, I was a communist. And I'm not sorry. I smoke marijuana every chance I get. I sit in my house for days on end and stare at the roses in the closet. Whenever I go out to Chinatown, I get drunk.
ambition is to be president, despite the fact that I'm a Catholic. America, how can I write my whole living when you're in your silly? I will continue like Henry Ford. My strokes are as individual as his automobiles, more so that they're all different sizes. America, I will sell you my strokes, $2,500 a piece, $500 down on your old stroke. America, free. America, safe. Spanish colonists. America, Sacramento, Mantetti must not die. America, I am the Scottsboro Boys. America, when I was 7, Mama used to take me to Congress and sell meetings. They sold us garbanzos, a handful ticket, a ticket Costa Rica, and the speeches were free, and everybody was angelic and sentimental about the workers. There was also a satiric, no idea what the the party was in 1835. Scott Near was a grand old man, a real mensch. Mother Bloor once made me cry, and what songs do I remember playing? Everybody must have been a spy! America, you don't really want to go to war. America, it's the bad Russians. The Russians, and I'm telling you! And I'm fucking Russians! The Russia wants to eat us alive! The Russia's bad! She wants to grab our cars out from our garages! Her wants to grab Chicago! Her needs a Red Reader's Digest! Her wants are auto plants in Siberia! Not to mention, big bureaucracy running our filling stations. That, no good. And make Indians learn to read. And be big black niggers. That, that'll make us all work 16 hours a day. Hell. America, this is quite serious. America, this is the impression I get from looking into the television set. America, is this correct? It's true. I don't want to join the army or turn blades in precision parts of factories. I'm nearsighted and psychopathic anyway. I better get right down to it. America, I'm putting my career shoulder to the wheel.
While some civil rights leaders urged a more cautious approach to civil rights, Malcolm X expressed the feelings of many blacks that more uncompromising methods of struggle were needed. Like many members of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, Malcolm X advocated the right of armed self-defense for blacks and other oppressed groups living in so violently racist a society as the United States. Here's an excerpt of a speech Malcolm X delivered in Detroit, Michigan. 2 years after giving this speech, he was assassinated in New York City.
We want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand. We all agree tonight look at yourself, be you black, brown, red, or yellow, a so-called Negro, you represent a person who poses such a serious problem for America because you're not wanted. Once you face this as a fact, then you can start plotting a course that will make you appear intelligent instead of unintelligent. What you and I need to do is learn to forget our differences. When we come together, we don't come together as Baptists or Methodists. You don't catch hell because you're a Baptist. And you don't catch hell because you're a Methodist. No, you don't catch hell because you're a Baptist or a Methodist. You don't catch hell because you're a Democrat or a Republican. You don't catch hell because you're a Mason or an elk. And you sure don't catch hell because you're an American, because if you was an American, you wouldn't catch no hell.
Damn straight.
Yeah. You catch hell because you're a black man. You catch hell. All of us catch hell for the same reason. So we're all black people. So-called Negroes. Second-class citizens. Ex-slaves. You're nothing but an ex-slave. You don't like to be told that. But what else are you? You didn't come here on the Mayflower. You came here in a slave ship. Like a horse, or a cow, or a chicken. And you were brought here by the people who came on the Mayflower. You were brought here by the so-called founding fathers, or pilgrims. They were the ones who brought you here. We have a common enemy. We have this in common. We have a common oppressor, a common exploiter, and a common discriminator. But once we realize that we have this common enemy, then we unite on the basis of what we have in common. And what we have foremost in common is that enemy, the white man.
Preach.
I know some of y'all think some of them aren't enemies. Time will tell. What is the difference between the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution? First, what is a revolution? Sometimes I'm inclined to believe that many of our people are using this term, revolution, loosely, without taking careful consideration of what it really means, what its historic characteristics are. When you study the historic nature of revolutions, the objective of a revolution, the result of a revolution, and the methods used in a revolution, you may change words. You may devise another program. You may change your goal. You may change your mind. Look at the American Revolution in 1776. That revolution was for what? For land. Why did they want land? Independence. How did they carry it out? Bloodshed. Number one, it was based on land, the basis of independence. And the only way they could get it was bloodshed. The French Revolution. What was it based on? The landless against the landlord. What was it for? Land. How did they get it? Bloodshed. Was no love lost. Was no negotiation. Was no compromise. I'm telling you, you don't know what a revolution is. Because when you find out what it is, you get back in the alley. You get out of the way. The Russian Revolution. What was it based on? Land. The landless against the landlord. How did they bring it about? Bloodshed. You haven't got a revolution that doesn't involve bloodshed. And you're afraid to bleed. I said you're afraid to bleed.
No longer.
Burgundy. You bled. He sent you to the South Pacific to fight the Japanese. You bled. You bleed for white people. But when it comes time to seeing your own churches being bombed and little black girls murdered, you haven't got no blood. You bleed when the white man says bleed. You bark when the white man says bark. You bite when the white man says bite. I hate to say this about us, but it's true. How are you going to be non-violent in Mississippi, as violent as you were in Korea? How can you justify being non-violent in Mississippi and Alabama when your churches are being bombed and your black girls are being murdered, and meanwhile you're going to get violent with Hitler and Tojo and somebody else you don't even know? If violence is wrong in America, violence is wrong abroad.
That's right.
If it's wrong to be violent, defending black women and black children and black babies and black men, then it is wrong for America to draft us and send us abroad and make us violent in defense of her. And if it is right for America to draft us and teach us how to be violent in defense of her, then it is right for you and I to do whatever is necessary to defend our people right here in this country.
In November of 1970, after his arrest along with others for participating in a Boston protest at an army base while soldiers were being sent to Vietnam, Howard Zinn flew to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore to take part in a debate with the philosopher Charles Franklin on civil disobedience. That day, he was supposed to appear in court in connection to charges related to the Boston protest. Now, he had a choice. Show up in court and miss his opportunity to explain practice his commitment to disobedience, or face the consequences of defying the court order by going to Baltimore. He chose to go. The next day, when he returned to Boston to teach his morning classes right here at Boston University, two detectives were waiting outside the classroom. They hauled him off the court where he was sentenced to a few days in jail. This is the speech that he gave that night at Johns Hopkins.
I start from the supposition that the world is topsy-turvy, that things are all wrong, that the wrong people are in jail, and the wrong people are out of jail, that the wrong people are in power, and the wrong people are out of power. That the wealth that is distributed in this country and the world in such a way as not to simply require small reform, but to require a drastic reallocation of wealth. I start from the supposition that we don't have to say too much about this, because all we have to do is think about the state of the world today and realize that things are all upside down. Daniel Barrowgate is in jail, a Catholic priest, a poet who opposes the war, and J. Edgar Hoover is free, you see. David Dillinger, who has opposed war ever since he was this high, and who has used all his energy and passion against it, is in danger of going to jail. At Kent State University, 4 students were killed by the National Guard. And then students were indicted. In every city in this country, when demonstrations take place, the protesters, whether they have demonstrated or not, whatever they have done, are assaulted and clubbed by the police. And then they are arrested for assaulting a police officer. Something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. When we ship 10,000 bombs full of nerve gas across the country and drop them in somebody else's swimming pool so as not to bother our own. So, you lose your perspective after all. If you don't think, if you just listen to the TV and read scholarly things, you actually begin to think things aren't so bad, or that just little things are wrong. But you have to get a little detached, and then come back and look at the world. And you are horrified. So we have to start from that supposition that things really are topsy-turvy. And our topic is topsy-turvy. Civil disobedience. As soon as you say the topic is civil disobedience, you're saying our problem is civil disobedience. That is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is the number of people all over the world who've obeyed the dictates of the leaders of their government and have gone to war. And millions have been killed because of this obedience. We recognize this for Nazi Germany. We know that the problem there was obedience. That people obeyed Hitler. People obeyed. That was wrong. They should have challenged. And they should have resisted. And if we were only there, we could have shown them. Even in Stalin's Russia, we can understand that. People are obedient. All these herd-like people. Remember those bad old days when people were exploited by feudalism. Everything was terrible in the Middle Ages. But now we have Western civilization, the rule of law. The rule of law has normalized and maximized the injustice that existed before the rule of law. That is what the rule of law has done. When in all the nations of the world, the rule of law is the darling of the leaders and the plague of the people, we ought to begin to recognize this. We have to transcend these national boundaries in our thinking. Nixon and Brezhnev have much more in common with one another than we have with Nixon. J. Edgar Hoover has far more in common with the head of the Soviet secret police than he has with any of us. It's the international dedication to law and order that binds the leaders of all countries in a camaraderie bond. That's why we're always surprised when they get together. They smile. They shake hands. They smoke cigars. They really do like one another, no matter what they say. The law is the Bill of Rights. In fact, that is what we think of when we develop our reverence for the law. So, you have to be careful when you say, I'm for the law. I revere the law. What part of the law are you really talking about? I'm not against all law. But I think we ought to begin to make very important distinctions about what laws do what things to what people. What we are trying to do, I assume, is really get back to the principles and aims and spirit of the Declaration of Independence. This spirit is resistance to illegitimate authority and forces to deprive people of their life and liberty and right to pursue happiness. And therefore, under these conditions, it urges the right to alter or abolish their current form of government, and the stress has been on abolish. But to establish the principles of the Declaration of Independence, we are going to need to go outside the law, to stop obeying the laws that demand killing, or that allocate wealth the way it's been done before, or that put people in jail for petty technical offenses, and keep other people out of jail for enormous crimes. My hope is that this kind of spirit will take place not just in this country, but in other countries as well. Because they all need it. People in all countries need the spirit of disobedience to the state, which is not a metaphysical thing, but a force. Well, and we need a kind of declaration of interdependence among people in all countries, in all of the world, who are striving for the same thing.
In March 1987, the political movement to confront the AIDS crisis found militant expression with ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power in New York City. Here, activist Vito Russo, author of the groundbreaking book, The Celluloid Closet, as well as a founding member of ACT UP and the Gay and Lesbian Anti-Defamation League, speaks of how people with AIDS were dying not of a disease, but of homophobia, racism, and indifference. Russo himself died as a result of AIDS in 1990 at the age of 44.
A friend of mine in New York City has a half-fare transit card, which means that he can get on subways and buses for half price. And the other day, when he showed his card to the attendant asked him what disability he had. And he said, I have AIDS. And the attendant said, no, you don't. Because if you had AIDS, you'd be home dying. So I wanted to speak up today as somebody with AIDS who is not dying. You know, for the past 3 years, since I got this disease, since I was diagnosed, my family thinks two things about my situation. One, they think that I'm going to die. And two, they think that my government is doing everything in its power to try and stop it. But they're wrong on both accounts. So if I'm dying from anything, I'm dying from homophobia. from indifference and red tape, because these are the things that are preventing an end to this crisis. If I'm dying from anything, I'm dying from the President of the United States. And especially, if I'm dying from anything, I'm dying from the sensationalism of newspapers, magazines, and television shows, which are interested in me as a human interest story only if I'm willing to be a helpless victim, but not if I'm fighting for my life. If I'm dying from anything, I'm dying from the fact that not enough rich, white, heterosexual men have gotten AIDS for anybody to give a shit. You know, living with AIDS in this country is like living in a twilight zone. Living with AIDS is like living in a war which is happening only for those who happen to be in the trenches. Every time a shell explodes, you look around you and you discover you've lost more of your friends. But no one else seems to notice. It's not happening to them. They are walking the streets as though you are living through some sort of nightmare. And only you can hear the screams of the people who are dying and their cries for help. No one else seems to be noticing. 2.5 years ago, I picked up Life magazine, and I read an editorial which said, "It's time to pay attention because this disease is starting to strike the rest of us." It was as if I wasn't holding the magazine in my hand. And since then, nothing has changed to alter the perception that AIDS is not happening to the real people in this country. It's not happening to us in the United States. No, it's happening to them. To the disposable population of fags and junkies who deserve what they get. The media tells them that they don't have to care because the people who really matter are not in danger. Twice, 3 times, 4 times, the New York Times has published editorial saying, "Don't panic yet over AIDS. It still hasn't entered the general population. And until it does, we don't have to give a shit." And they don't sit in television studios surrounded by technicians who wear rubber gloves, who won't put a microphone on you because it isn't happening to them, so they don't give a shit. And they don't have their houses burned down by bigots and morons. They watch it on the news, and they eat dinner, and they go to bed because it isn't happening to them, and they don't have to give a shit. And they don't spend their waking hours going from hospital room to hospital room and watching the people that they love die slowly of neglect and bigotry because it isn't happening to them, and they don't give a shit. They haven't been to 2 funerals a week for the past 3, 4, 5 years, so they don't give a shit because it's not happening to them. And can somebody please tell me why every single penny allocated for education and prevention gets spent on ad campaigns that are directed almost exclusively to white heterosexual teenagers who they keep telling us are not at risk? Why, for 8 years, every single newspaper and magazine in this country has done cover stories on AIDS only when the threat of heterosexual transmission is raised? Why, for 8 years, every single educational film designed for use in high schools has limited HIV-positive material before being approved by the Board of Education? Why, for 8 years, every single public information pamphlet and videotape distributed by establishment sources has ignored specific homosexual content? Why are we here today? We're here because it's happening to us, and because we give a shit. And if there were more of us, AIDS wouldn't be what it is at this moment in history. It's more than just a disease, which ignorant people have turned into an excuse to exercise the bigotry that they have always felt. Someday, the AIDS crisis will be over. Remember that. And when it's over, when the day has come, and when it's gone, there'll be people alive on this earth, gay people and straight people, men and women, black and white, who will hear the story that once there was a terrible disease in this country, some cases gave their lives, so that other people might live and be free. And we had to commit ourselves to doing it. And then, after we kick the shit out of this disease, we're all going to be alive to kick the shit out of the system, so that this never happens again.
Woo!
Cindy Shane's son, Casey, was killed in Iraq in 2004. This is a speech he delivered in August of 2005 at the Veterans for Peace Convention in Dallas, Texas, shortly before heading to Bush's vacation home in Crawford, Texas to set up camp. Although President Bush refused to meet with her, Shane remained instrumental in galvanizing sentiment against the occupation of Iraq.
I said to my son not to go. I said, you know what's wrong. You know you're going over there. You know your unit might have to kill innocent people. You know you might die. And he says, my buddies are gone. And if I don't go, my buddies will be in danger. 30 of our young men have already died this month, and it's only the 5th of August. And the tragedy of the Marines in Ohio is awful. But do you think George Bush will interrupt his vacation and go visit the families of the Marines that have died? No, because he doesn't care. He doesn't have a heart. That's not enough to stop his little playing cowboy game in Crawford for 5 weeks. So, as you can imagine, every day the grieving parents that have lost. I don't like to use that word. The grieving parents whose child was murdered. It's extremely difficult. You can't get a small scab on our wound because every day it's ripped open. So anyway, when that filth spewer and warmonger George Bush was speaking after the tragedy of the Marines in Ohio, he said a couple of things that outraged me. Seriously outraged me. George Bush was talking and he never mentioned the terrible incident of those Marines. But he did say that the families of the ones who have been killed can rest assured that their loved ones died for a noble cause. He also said, and he says this often and it drives me crazy, he said that we have to stay in Iraq and complete the mission to honor the sacrifices of the ones who have fallen. And I say, why should I want one more mother to go through what I've gone through because my son is dead? You know what? The only way he can honor my son's sacrifice is to bring our troops home. To make my son's death count for peace and love and not war and hatred like Bush stands for. I don't want him using my son's death to continue this killing. I don't want him to exploit my son and others to continue the killing. And I just had this brainstorm. I'm going to Crawford. I don't know where Crawford is, but I don't care. I'm going. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to tell them, you get that evil maniac out here. Because this Gold Star mother, someone whose son's blood is on his hands, has some questions for him. And I'm going to say, okay, listen here, George. Number one, I demand that every time you get up and spew the filth that you're continuing the killing in Iraq to honor my son's sacrifice, honoring the fallen heroes to continue the killing, you say, except Casey Sheehan. You don't have my permission to use my son's name. And I'm going to say, and you tell me what the noble cause is that my son died for. And if he even starts to say freedom and democracy, I'm going to say bullshit. You tell me the truth. You tell me that my son And they might be able to put our bodies in prison, but they can't put our spirits in prison. When I was growing up, it was communists. Now it's terrorists. So you always have somebody that's our enemy to be afraid of. So the war machine can build more guns and bombs and bullets and ammunition. But I do see hope. I see hope in this country. 58% of the American public are with us. We're preaching to the choir, but not everybody in the choir is singing. If all of the 58% started singing, this war would end.
Marge Piercy is an American poet, novelist, and social activist. In this poem, she expresses the importance of solidarity and struggle and the power of building movements. It was one of Howard Zinn's favorites, and it was read at his memorial just 3 years ago.
What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up. They can bust you. They can break your fingers. They can burn your brain with electricity. Blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child. Wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't blame them for doing. How can you stop them? Alone? You can fight. You can refuse. You can take what revenge you can, but they will